how to be profitable in 2024.
Marketing has really changed.
There is a path to a career within our practices.
Change your website geared more towards them.
The multi-generational communication conflicts.
People aren't coming to you because you're an in-network provider. They're coming to you because they want a beautiful smile.
This is truly what's on the mind of orthodontists.
Having that high level of service.
This day and age, it's all about differentiating yourself.
So happy to be here.
All right, Nic, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, great. So we're asking everybody the same 4 questions. What, in your opinion, is on the mind of every orthodontist that they don't have a solution for?
Team retention, keeping people working within the practice and engaged. The old ownership mentality that came from your boomers and your Gen X's is different and engaged different now. They don't have an answer for that.
That's very insightful. So in light of this problem or issue that they're all facing, I'm a big fan of The Obstacle is the Way. You read that book?
Yeah. I'm a fan.
So how can, in your opinion, which I know you work with a lot of practices and everything, how can these practices lean into that specific obstacle and find solutions through that?
So I think what we forget is that we're people first, employees second, right? And so engaging with people on that human level and getting to know them. Now, there's a line, right, that you don't want to cross employers to employees, but people want to, just like we want to do business with people that we like, that we trust, that we feel connected with. We want to work with people that we like, that we trust, and that we feel connected with. That does not change, whether you're a consumer or an employee or teammate, et cetera. It's all the same. So we're missing the piece where we get to know someone at the human level and have empathy for who they are, right? And an understanding for who they are and what makes them tick and what their emotional currency is. And being able to address that, play to that, and speak to that for them so that they want to be with us for a longer term. Because we're competing with a lot of other things out there, right? Most people will say, oh, you're not paying enough, the almighty dollar. Like, I don't know how many times you've driven by. I've been in smaller venue offices and I know what the team is paid, but I'll drive by McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell and the marquee says paying X per hour with a $500 sign-on bonus after 90 days or whatever the case may be. Well, if money's the only issue, they're all going to work there, right? If it beats your offer. But if that's not the only issue and you're looking for a place to belong where you feel useful and needed and respected and appreciated, you'll stay. Because life is not about who included anymore. It's about who's not included, right? And so there's always that person that feels like they're on the periphery. And it's hard to crack into offices with really long-standing teams that have different thought processes and ideas of how work should be. Different generations, right? I think Andrea Cook, I'm going to mention another consultant years ago, did a presentation on working with all those different generations, the boomers, the X's, the millennials, and the Z's, and how to meld all that together. And I think that human component is the piece that's missing.
Totally agree. I think that's really great insight. What are some specific solutions? And I might be getting a little bit ahead because we're going to talk about this a little bit, but if I'm a doctor, sometimes I hear that stuff and I'm thinking, yeah, that seems great, but I just don't know what the solutions could be or some different things that I should start even thinking about. So what are some things that they should be looking for, thinking about as they try to formulate a solution?
Well, of course, as you know, legally in the interview process, I can't really ask certain questions about how somebody ticks, but I can rely on my team because the teams are, I've got a really great client and he uses this phrase all the time. The team is the keeper of the culture. The team members are the keepers of the culture, right? They decide what that culture looks like, not him, the team does. And so having a team that is willing to be the kid on the playground. Do you remember being a little kid? I was the little kid on the playground that went up to all the other kids and went, hey, I'm Nic. You want to be friends? Like I was that kid. I'm still that kid. I'm still that kid. You know that. I walk up to booths at shows. I'm like, hey, oh, you're Davin? Hi, I'm Nic. Let's be friends. I mean, I'm that kid, but not every kid is that kid. But every office has someone who has that inner kid in them that wants to be the hostess and the person who's going to be the leader or the keeper of that culture. And I think what you do is you set up a structure that allows for that rather than stifles that. A game that I ask my private clients to do on a regular basis when they're like, I feel like we're just losing our edge and connection. Have a potluck lunch. This is going to sound totally Midwestern, which is what I am. I'm a farm girl, right? Provide the main dish, make everybody else bring their favorite side dish that goes with it, right? Share it in your lunchroom, and then sit down and have everybody submit a question that has nothing to do with ortho. It's all personal. Put it in a bowl, and everybody draws out a question and answers it as a conversation piece. And the rules of engagement are no work talk, no patients, no brackets, no appointments, no schedules, no next day offs, nothing. It has to be about those questions and one another. And when you have to start engaging on a personal level and understanding little bits of someone, you have a different respect or apathy for them while you're working. And it's missing. The human connection piece is missing. And we've gotten worse at it since COVID.
Yeah.
We forgot how to behave in society.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I remember whenever I first started, just even talking through this idea that, hey, there's a person connected to the bracket that you're working, connected to the teeth that you're moving. And when we pay attention to that, so really taking that and making sure that we're living it out in our team culture as well.
Yep. 100%.
And we didn't really introduce you at the beginning. I want to have you introduce us, tell us who you are, what you do, personal, everything. Kind of give us the down low on who is Nic Bradfield.
I'm Nic Bradfield. I've been only in dentistry and orthodontics as a grown person. Like, I don't know any other job as an adult besides I worked at McDonald's and detasseled corn as a kid. Like, I don't know, and babysat, like every other teenage girl does. But this is all I know. The ortho is my passion. It's my life's work, just like most everybody that's in ortho. And I love all the aspects of it, mostly the people. Love the people. And I'm happy to work with practices that'll have me.
Okay. So we're kind of moving now into the future of the industry, the short run, long term. I'd love your thoughts on both, but specifically with practices and the overall industry, kind of from both perspectives, where do you see that everybody's vulnerable?
Not controlling their message. So we're waking up this morning to the AAO just releasing a study that they paid an independent group to do regarding the demographics and the future of orthodontics, where we sit right now, right? And who's buying and who's not, and what consumer confidence looks like. And I was at a recent conference and this question was actually asked of us on stage. And it was funny because there were 2 consultants and 2 doctors on stage. And the 2 consultants, we were of the same mindset that we have to be really mindful of, it's if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to make up their own story about you and control that narrative for you. And, Smile Direct Club taught us some things about marketing, right? And how your average person out there, your average Joe every day, right, doesn't know necessarily the difference between the dentist straightening teeth and the orthodontist straightening teeth, right? They don't. They're both dental professionals. And so I think we need to pay really close. That's where we're vulnerable, right? Because SDC came in and they did take a market share for a time, right? And we were all kind of up in arms, worried about what this was going to do to the industry. They stayed longer than I thought they would initially, right? But they ultimately, that ended up fizzling out, and they are where they are now. But that showed, right, kind of a crack in the sidewalk for us and where we should be paying attention, because we don't do enough communicating direct to consumer about the specialty of orthodontics, which in my heart of hearts, I believe that we're the kings of dentistry. We have the most fun, right? We don't do anything that hurts anybody. We make everybody smile, literally. It's the best job in the entire world. So it's pretty exciting to be in orthodontics, whether you're an orthodontist or an orthodontic clinician or a consultant or a vendor. We've got it pretty good. But we aren't great as an industry at communicating direct to consumer about why we're different and why it's special. And I think that's the vulnerability piece for us. And I think maybe that wake up call, if we pay attention, like you said, Smile Direct Club seemed like an obstacle, which is now turned into an opportunity. And it turned into an opportunity when they came out. It was an opportunity for us to go, yeah, you can do mail order aligners if you want to, but at what risk and at what cost, right? So where can we meet the consumer where they are? Because that was a very attractive model for busy people. It was an attractive model for busy people. So what things can we do within our industry and our practices to mirror some of what was really great and attractive about that to our potential consumer, and where we can be as a whole handle that message better?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I guess a follow-up question on this would be, some things are beyond our control, right? Things happen to us or for us, or however you want to look at it. But so there's the messaging that the industry can control. But if I'm a practice in, somewhere in the middle of the country, I don't necessarily feel like I have the ability to control the message of the industry. And sometimes I don't even feel like I can control the message within my community to sway opinion. So what are some things that practices at the practice level can do to educate, to where they feel like they're getting heard and it's making a difference?
Yeah, I think that's all in their marketing plan, right? And right now, social media is kind of where everyone is. Whether you love it or hate it, my husband will not get on social media. He's anti-social media. But as practices, that's kind of the yellow pages of today. It's where everyone goes to learn about you. And, they want to do business with people they trust, people they like, people they feel like they know, right? People they feel like they connect with. And you can use those social media channels to actually control your message and write your own story. So they can get to know you a little bit. And when you sprinkle in things that are not, condescending or mean or backhanded about, hey, the specialty of orthodontics, and maybe I'm a board certified orthodontist, or did you know that orthodontists go to school for 2 extra years to specialize in straightening teeth? So you can, at a local level, control your own message in that social media piece that you do. You can also be within your community at career days and different things like that, right? So most orthodontists that I know do not want to do marketing. Right? It's the first thing everybody stops doing when things get busy, because they feel like it takes so much time and maybe they don't understand what they need to do. But it's actually really easy, and it can be pre-scheduled, and you can get your message out there. If you sit down in the fall when you're not very busy and you make a plan, you lay out your template for the next year, and that way things don't get left out of the mix. If you're not telling your story, somebody else is telling that story for you. So when you say, I can't control my message, you're the only one who can. You and your team are literally the only ones that can control your message. So if you're not going to do it, somebody else will send that message for you, and it won't be what you want. You
mentioned Smile Direct Club. I would say just this focus on adult treatment in general. I would love to know your thoughts on, is this a vulnerability? I don't know. I'm posing a question. I don't know the answer, but hopefully you do. Where, traditionally we've always thought as an industry, and maybe as individual doctors, that, kids are already coming to me. Families already kind of know that they need braces. On the industry level, we don't feel like we need to educate people that kids need braces. Now, maybe there's some level of what age that we're educating on, but in general, but then there's been this focus on, mostly with aligners and other types of products like that, to really focus as an industry on growing the number of adults. But do you feel like there's any vulnerabilities, either at the industry level or at the practice level, on kind of shifting focus towards adults?
I think that's where SDC, right, made their bread and butter. They focused on those busy adults that wanted to maybe get retreatment or a touch-up, or who never had treatment as children and didn't want the inconvenience of coming to an office, or the embarrassment of going back to their family orthodontist that they didn't want to let down because they didn't wear their retainers. So they focused on that. But here's an interesting, I'm going to differ from everyone else in the industry. And I'm going to say that we had this glut of adult orthodontics that happened between probably June of 2020 until mid 2022, right? Because we're all sitting here like you and I are right now, and we are picking apart every hair out of place, every tooth that might be moved, every wrinkle. So the beauty industry and orthodontics went through the roof during that time, right? And adult ortho went up by, and I think the study showed around 40% during that time. That was a glut that was never, and it will never happen again. We will never have an increase of 40% adults in practices. It's not going to happen, right? We treated them and they're done. What we will have the opportunity to do, though, is to do touch-ups and refinements and increased retainers and whitenings and things like that. But it won't be full adult treatment like it was before. The other piece is, though, yes, are children coming to you? Yeah, they are. But I still think that you need to educate people that, yes, children do need orthodontics, and depending on what your preferences of age and what modalities you're using, they're calling this I think it's the alpha generation. They're calling the kids that are ready for treatment now is the alpha generation. But what people are not realizing is these children are making decisions for their families, right? Now, it's not how I raised my children. Mine's a millennial. He'll be 37 years old on Wednesday. So I'm an older, I have older kids. But when we were buying a couch, we didn't go, hey, Andy, do you like this couch? But if you watch HGTV or you watch commercials, parents are asking for their children's input on life decisions. So parents are actually asking, and I'm hearing it in exams, where parents are like, well, we're getting 3 opinions and we're letting Sally decide, right? So Sally's getting to kind of write her own ticket as to where she wants to go. So I do think it's really important for you to control your message to that group as well, right? It's not just to the moms and dads, but how are you attractive in the marketplace to 12 and 13-year-olds? Because they are part of the decision making. So if you are a sterile environment that Susie has to come into for 18 months and it doesn't look fun to her and she doesn't have choices and options, Susie isn't going to pick you because you're the sad place.
Yeah.
You're just another dentist to Susie, right? In that respect. I hope I answered that question.
Well, I think so. I mean, I've run into a lot of orthodontists over the years that just kind of, well, kids have always come to me. And so that's like, almost like they have it on lockdown, and maybe they did, I'm not saying that that's one way or the other, but like you said, with kids making more choices and being allowed to make more choices for their family even. Mm-hmm. And then, you see some of these practices that get very focused on only treating adults, and they have an environment that's really only attractive to adults. And I think you did a great job answering it. I think you have to address both, right? So,
well, and if you have a practice that is only focused on adults, that actually tells its own story for you. And then when those adults are done and they're not coming back, then what will you do? And I think the doctors that say, well, the kids all come to me anyway, I think that's complacent. I think that you're believing your own press and resting on your laurels without trying hard and coasting anymore. And guess what? Somebody else is going to take, if you don't take care of that market share, somebody else will take care of it for you. So you better pay attention.
Yeah. Well, I think those are great ideas, great thoughts and ideas on where we're vulnerable. Now I want to end on like a high note, like where are these practices and where is the industry really set up and positioned well for success as you look into the next 18 months?
So I think on the practice level, it really depends on the demographic that you're serving, right? And I think that too many times people don't kind of study the area or the consumer in their area well before they plant themselves, or they stay planted where they started. It's kind of like planting a garden. I'm a farm girl, and you have to rotate your crops. And for the soil to be as fertile as it can be, you can't plant corn there every year because it'll deplete the soil. And if you want to do tomatoes, you need a certain amount of magnesium. So you need to know what that soil looks like. What does that fertile ground look like? And which things are going to grow best in that fertile ground? So I think it's really important to pay attention to what your area looks like. Is it aging? Are younger families moving in? What should my focus be? Who should I market to? Who am I taking care of? Are my referring offices aging out? Or younger people coming in, right? Where am I in my age and career, and how am I positioned well? I think our industry is doing a decent job. I really did like the piece that I saw that came out from the AAO with the demographic study that it's been saying, it's funny, it's been saying some things that I know several of the consultants out there have been saying for a while. I really liked that it, kind of validated some of the things that have been shared over the years, over the last like year and a half. So at least everybody's kind of now, I don't know if everybody agrees, but at least the word is out there, and, we can all be reading from the same hymnal, so to speak, and go, okay, well, this is what the industry is looking at for us. And I think that our governing bodies need to be better at marketing and better at messaging for us. And I know they've tried, and I'm not dissing. Like, I think at last count, there were 10,906 orthodontists in the United States, right? So we're not humongous, but I think it's important that we do get the message out. So I think as an industry, we're working hard at it. And I think that, I'm going to give a shout out to Kyle Fagala, recently had on 2 different orthodontists talking about, and I hate this word and they're going to cuss me for saying this, but corporate orthodontics versus private practice orthodontics. Listen, they're all private practices. They all practice privately within the 4 walls of what they do. They have support services and they may have some other financial help and other things like that, but it's an orthodontist, right? An actual orthodontist practicing orthodontics within a small community. So I think if we start to remember that we're all kind of on the same team, preserving our profession as this specialty, like I said earlier, the kings of dentistry, the specialty that it is, and we don't start fighting against one another, and we're working towards that. The unity of the message for our industry, regardless of whether you're part of a group or not part of a group. I actually think some of the groups work really, really hard to ensure the quality of their clinical orthodontics, especially the ones that are specialty, right? The ones that are focused on ortho and the ortho arm of their group. They want to make sure that they're doing it very well. And so I think everybody really does have the same goal ultimately, which is providing really great orthodontic care, quality care at every level and every venue that we're in, and ultimately making people smile, literally, right?
Right. So kind of start looking at this as a team effort here instead of an us versus them.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, so we've talked about a lot of things. And if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, okay, I just need to boil it down to like something that's actionable that I can take into the practice next week and implement or start to implement. What are kind of 1 to very simple, concrete next steps that you would recommend based on what we've talked about today?
Well, I think everybody should engage with their team. Right? So if you're the doctor that sneaks out for lunch and leaves at the end of the day and misses the morning meeting, try to come in and have a cup of coffee and chat in the morning. Just get to know your people a little bit. Stay in for lunch once a week, right? Talk with them. If they're all in the lunchroom, talk with them. So if you're that guy or gal, right, change up some of your habits to be there, because that's going to give you that piece that we originally talked about, which is people need to feel like, they're engaged. The other thing is, lean into your digital marketing, lean into your social media, let people see who you are. The good news about orthodontics and orthodontists, or we don't have to take ourselves all that seriously. I mean, what we do is important and it's serious work, and we do take, moving teeth seriously, but we can have some fun doing it. So, right, let people see you cut up and be normal, and share that piece of you. And I don't know that there's a third, just be yourself,
Yeah, there doesn't have to be a third.
Be a good person. How about that? Let's all just be good people.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there are lots of orthodontists that find it hard to be themselves on social media specifically, as you're talking about?
Yes, I do. I think it's a vulnerable position to be in, right? Like whenever I'm talking to orthodontists that are sharing cases like on a big screen, that's a really vulnerable place to be, right? Because everybody's looking at your treatment. And, I think Dino Watt said it best. Orthodontists are not perfectionists, they're imperfectionists, right? They're looking for the imperfection in things, right? And they're looking for the imperfections. So I think that that's a really vulnerable place for them to be. It's almost like, kind of naked out there, when you put yourself on there. And we all feel this way. I think this is just human nature. You think everybody's assessing you and judging you. And when you can let that piece go and just be yourself, whoever that piece of you authentically is. If you're silly with your kids, be silly on social media if that's who you naturally are. If you're not naturally that, don't try to be something that you aren't naturally, because everybody's going to see that. So I think it's hard. I think being vulnerable is really hard.
Yes, I would agree. Well, and like my mom used to say, most of the time people aren't even thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves.
Yes.
So just be yourself. All right.
Not all about you, right?
No, as much as we oftentimes would like to think that it is. All right. So the final question, and I'm asking everybody this, and this is one thing that no one had a heads up on. So,
okay.
All right. So we're fair game. I'm big into the idea that story is a powerful thing. And we in our company are trying to enter into the story that the consumers and the patients are a part of and telling for themselves. We're also trying to, insert ourselves into the story and understand the story that the doctors that we serve are a part of. And I know as a consultant, you're, out there understanding and being a part of the story that your practices are telling and helping them even tell that story. So in the idea of story, who or what is your favorite villain and who or what is your favorite hero?
I'm going to give an obvious answer because you know me. Favorite villain is going to be the devil. And my favorite hero is going to be Jesus. Every time, all day, every day, right? Because he saved me from the villain who is always in my ear trying to tell me that I should do X, Y, or Z, or that I'm not enough for this, that, or the other. And Jesus paid it all for me. So they're my favorite only because of who they are to one another.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
I'll add an amen to that.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, thank you for your willingness to be vulnerable and to share your ideas and your opinions with us. And we really appreciate you giving up the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.